Well, hi guys, how you doing? It's me, Mitch, old guy in a drone here without headphones, wearing a lavalier mic. And a completely different setup today. No StreamYard, streaming from right out of OBS, something I haven't done in a long time. So I'm counting on the fact that maybe y'all can hear me. If somebody let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. Everything coming through, the picture looks good. I'm wearing a little lavalier mic here today, not a wireless one on a string, so I have to be careful. So if I'm moving around and you hear all of a sudden the whole workstation comes tumbling to the ground, you know I pulled on the cord too hard. And who we got? Joe C. How you doing, my friend? And see Jody there. It says I got 4 people watching so far, so I didn't know what to expect today. I didn't know if at this time on a Friday afternoon I was going to get a big crowd, no crowd. At any rate, I want to build this little quad, and what I plan to do with it is after this whole live stream is done, and it may take an hour, it may take 3 hours, I don't know, but I do want to get it ready to fly before we're done today. I'll go ahead and I'll download the finished live stream video from YouTube and edit it down to a 10 or 15 minute build video, so people who want to see how it's done and don't want to sit through me screwing 4 motors in and figuring out which screw goes where, will be able to see a highlight kind of reel of this thing. The kit is this little Tyro89. And I've built the, as you know, on a live stream, I built this Tyro129, which is an 8-inch quad, and this little puppy, you could put 8 of them on top of this. It's very small, little 2.5-inch props, and should go together pretty good. Should go together pretty good because there's very little soldering to be done. The only problem that I see with this thing is that there's no instructions at all. I don't even think there's instructions on the website, so I guess we're going to just figure it out as we go, and I'll apologize in advance if I happen to screw something in the wrong place and realize it's wrong and have to take it apart and redo it. But unfortunately, not that the instructions that came with the other kits, and I built the Tyro 79, the 99, and the 129. They had instructions, but about all they were good for was a diagram that shows you where the screws go. So I guess with that said, I'm not going to have any guests today. No panel, no nothing, just me and some screwdrivers and a soldering iron. Let me say hi to Dazra74. How you doing? Good to see you. And Vidar, thanks for coming in, guys. And I hope this doesn't bore you to tears, but I seem to get a lot of replays on the live stream builds that I do for some reason. For some reason, people seem to like to watch an old guy try to figure out which screw goes where. So if that's what y'all want, I'll give it to you. I've had this thing for 3-4 days now, and it's all I could do. Not to actually have built the thing before now. So here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to the build table, and I'm going to glance at the chat once in a while. But I really, if you say something in the chat to me or ask a question or something like that, it seems like I'm ignoring you. I apologize in advance for that, but I don't have a helper here with me today to keep an eye on those things. All right, the first thing that we're going to do over here is open it up and unpack all the stuff and see exactly what we have in here. So the first thing we have is some tie wraps, which are my favorite thing when it comes to building. And here's the frame. So let's take the frame out of the bag. And it is, for those of you that care about these things, it is, well, my thing doesn't go quite that wide, but it is, let's say it's 75 to there. And 40, that's about 115 millimeters from motor to motor, and I think that's what sounds about right for this size, 115 millimeter quad. The next thing we got here are, to give you 8 propellers. Now keep in mind, this whole kit costs 89 bucks, and so you get everything here you get for 89 bucks. And these are nice little props. It looked like about 2.5 inch props. Again, we got 1¼ inches per blade, so it is a 2.5 inch propeller. And we won't need them until we're ready to fly, so we'll put them away. And the next thing we got here is screws. And we got a whole bunch of screws. Got 3 packages of screws, so we'll open them at the end. Here we have all the wiring that we need for this thing, except for the receiver. And what we have here is this is the receiver plug right here. A little XT30 and a capacitor for that. And this is the connector that connects the ESC to the flight controller. And it's warm down here in Florida, and it's warm in here today under the lights. So I turned the fan up a little bit. If you hear some fan noise, sorry about that. The next thing that we have here is a 90-degree, all else fails, resort to surgery. Considering this has got this strange canopy here, and in this canopy the flight controller mounts into this instead of mounting on the stack, and that puts the USB port kind of down in behind something. They give you this little 90-degree USB adapter so you can plug it in to do Betaflight. So we won't need that till the end, so I'll put that over here with the propellers. Here they give you a battery strap, which probably isn't a very good battery strap. In this bag we have the motors. And I see nobody's talking in the chat, so I don't have to worry about answering you guys. Okay, so these are cute little motors. I mean, they're absolutely adorable. And I noticed that they finally, an Eachine kit finally gives you a motor that has silicone wires. And unlike most quad kits, you don't have to solder the motors. They come with plugs. And if you, there's my thumb, and there's the size of the motor. So that gives you some idea how tiny these little things are. It amazes me that how they make these tiny little things. They look like they're pretty well made. I hope they're smooth. All right, so we got motors, and the next thing we got here is the camera, and I believe this is a name brand. I think it's a Cadex camera. It's supposed to be a pretty good little camera, much better than they usually used to give you with their cheap kits, and it is. It's a it says Cadex Turbo EOS V2. Well, it sounds impressive. Again, it's right down there in size with the motors. It's a nano camera, I think is what they call this size camera, but it's just cute as can be, and it's got a 1/3 inch sensor, 3 megapixel sensor. It doesn't say what the whether it's a 2.1 millimeter or 1.9 or what, but that's an impressive looking little camera. Again, remember this whole kit, everything that it comes with it is 89 bucks. Now here we have the flight controller. And that's a teeny little thing. And there's the USB port. Got a little boot button on it, and I can only guess that we have to try to figure out what these different plugs are for. This one says VTX. This little one here has got to be the receiver. This big one over here is where it is going to go to the ESC. So we'll figure out. They're all different size plugs, so that might help. So let's take and see if that says, if I can read what it says on there. That's the it says camera over here. So this has got to be the receiver. So let's plug the receiver in to here. It doesn't fit, so maybe that's not the receiver, or I got it in upside down. No, that's it. It fits. Okay, that's the receiver right there. And in the next bag we have we're up to 10 people. Holy cow. Hey, you, Asgard. How you doing, buddy? Long time, man. We're building a tiny little quad here today. And did I miss anybody in the chat? No, not yet. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you, Hugh. This is the size of these things is absolutely tremendous. I mean, when you look at it next to my thumbnail, this is the video transmitter, and it has four wires to the video transmitter. And for those of you guys that are FPV guys, what that tells me right off the bat is that this little teeny VTX actually has smart audio. So how about that? Usually Eachine, even though their VTXs have smart audio, they only seem to give you cables with 3 wires, which is the battery, ground, and the video signal. But this one's wired for smart audio, and let's make sure we know where that plugs in. So that plugs in right here to the VTX, like that. And in the next bag we have the ESC, and that is the last bag. So there's the ESC, and the ESC, let me zoom in on this now so I can show you a close-up of some of these parts, and I'll keep glancing over at the screen there to make sure that I am centered in on this stuff. I don't have anybody yelling at me today to move it. Hugh, yeah, the whole Tyro series, I've built most of them. Other than the vibration problem that I had with the motors on the Tyro79, they're all terrific. And for the money, especially for a beginner, they may not be the highest quality components, but you're not going to be ripping through concrete, abandoned buildings and things that are going to tear up your quad. Oh, Vidar, thank you. Holy mackerel. What do we got? 100 NOKs, Norwegian. I have no idea how much that is, but it's got to be a lot. Thank you so much, my friend. Wow. Wow. That's a Norwegian kroner, I guess. Not really up on foreign currency, but thanks so much for that. I really appreciate that. Okay. I'm glad I looked over there. And who else we got here? We got Psycho FPV. Oh, a new quad. Hey, FPV friends. And a new visitor to my channel. Wow. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. $10. Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let me Psycho, let me go ahead and give you a blue wrench so you can fit right in. I give everybody who I don't think is a troll a wrench in my channel here. It does primarily so I can spot somebody that has never been to one of my streams before and make sure I welcome them. So thanks for coming in. I hope you enjoy this. So let's get back to this. I wanted to zoom in and show you the little components here. And this is the flight controller right here. Oh, Carlos, how you doing? Good to see you. This is the little ESC rather. And there's plugs in each corner for the motors to plug in, which is handy. But they also give you solder pads here. You can see the solder pads, so you don't. If you were to use this ESC in another build that didn't have the plugs for it, you can still solder it. And I think that's true for all the connections on their flight controller too, which is here. And there are small solder pads all over it, but this stuff is really tiny. You can see by the size of my finger how small these things are, and it's a good thing that they are plug and play. Make it, because I've soldered on these little 20 millimeter controllers before, and it's really touchy. So this wire here is going to go over to the flight controller, and let's plug that in, and that will go down to this plug on the flight controller. So we've got the only thing that isn't plugged in right now into here is the camera, and the camera has its wire and plug soldered on. Let me back out a little bit here, and so I don't go off screen. The camera will plug into I would imagine it'd be this one in the front here, because I only have one other empty plug there, and I don't know what that's for, but this would fit right in here. So there's the camera, and that leaves one. So we got a camera, a VTX, flight controller, and a receiver, and that's all we need to fly. So let me see if there's some clue as to what this fourth plug is for. I'm trying to read the tiny little writing on the might be for a beeper or something like that. That's where a jeweler's loop comes in handy. So let's see if I can see what this fourth plug says down here. Buzzer. It's got a tiny little, it looks like a tiny little buzzer or something right on the board there. But I think that's where I think that's a plug for an external buzzer. So that's good. So there we have all the components. That's where all the wires go. So that's easy. That's not too hard to figure it out. Now what I like to do before I build a quad, and I got a brand new flight controller, is I like to hook the flight controller to Betaflight to test it out and make sure that that it actually does come up and that we can see it. So let me go over to the Betaflight screen here, and I'm going to go ahead and plug the flight controller in. And it does up here show me COM 6, which means I do have, it did sense it. And I've got little flashing red light on the board. So let's connect to the flight controller. Okay, So right away it's telling me that right side up of the board is, boy, it's way out of alignment, but right side up on the board appears to be the side opposite the plugs. The side with the USB port appears to be the top. But let's see if there's an arrow on this board that shows where the front is. Oh, I know what it is. It's actually goes. This board actually goes in at a 45-degree angle. So somewhere on this board, there it is. There's the angle that points to the front. So this should be front up, front down, roll right, roll left, yaw left, yaw right. Okay, so the settings for the sensor alignment on the board is correct, and that's always the first thing I check when I get a brand new controller board, and especially if I've got one I'm going to be soldering things to, because I want to make sure the board is working and communicating with the computer. And just for fun, let's take a look and see what we have here on this board. So I'm going to go into my CLI. I'm going to type version to see what version of Betaflight I have. Okay, now this is this tells me that the target of this is a Maytech F411 board. It's got an older version of Betaflight. It's got 3.5.5. But I'm not going to fool with that. I'm not going to upgrade it to 4.1. I'm not going to upgrade it to 3.5.7, which was the latest version in the 3 series. But I'm going to leave it right the way it is. As far as ports go, everything should be set up already. This has got, the receiver is on UART1, and UART2 over here in the peripherals tab uses the, it says it's set up for smart audio. So that's set up to, that's already set up. So let's see if we can take a look at the configuration. It's Quad X. It's using D-Shot 600, but that's pretty cool. 4.5% motor idle thread. I am going to change the arming angle to 180, and the reason I do that is that I don't want the quad to tell me I can't arm it if it's more than 25 degrees off a vertical. I want to be able to arm it if it's upside down in a tree. So I will change that. I'm going to give it a name here, so we'll call it the Tyro89, and that'll show up in my OSD when I set it up the way I want. S-Bus receiver, it's got soft serial telemetry, that doesn't need to be on, but it doesn't matter. OSD integrated dynamic filter, no GPS, none of this other stuff. We're going to leave all this the way it is and save that. Reconnect. That was the configuration tab. I'm not going to worry about the PID tuning battery modes, or let's see what they got set up for modes. They already have modes set up. We'll have to go in and fix that for how I have my receiver set up, but they did set up some modes, which shows you they have set this up mostly. The motors tab, we'll deal with all that. So anyway, that is the checking out the flight controller. I will shut down Betaflight, and now I know before I bolt all this crap into the quad that it is working. So who we got? We got Carlos here. We got Vidar, Psycho. Good, guys. Glad you're hanging in with me. All right, so let's start building this thing now. Okay. So the first thing we got to do is sort out all these screws and see if we can make heads or tails of what screws go where. And there's a lot of little screws in here. Now there's 2 separate screws here. I don't know what they're for, but I'm going to leave them out of the mix. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of this particular screw. And I know that I need 16 motor screws, so that's not a motor screw. So I guess that all of these, I'm going to separate these into piles based on on size and see how many we got of the different screws. This is, I know this is riveting. Absolutely riveting. Got a lot of little nuts here. Absolutely riveting television here, but maybe if one of you guys decide to build this thing and can't figure out what screws go where, you can refer back to this. There's a couple of little rubber standoffs which are for the for this canopy, and there's 2 standoffs, and there's 3. Oh, here's the third one. There's 3 screws. Okay, so I know that these 3 tall screws here are what hold. They go on the canopy. I know that these standoffs are probably for the ESC. I've got a bunch of this size screw, so I imagine these are motor screws. And for the life of me, I can't understand why they can't print up a simple 1-sheet set of instructions for this. So these are motor screws, I would imagine. This one is a little longer. That goes over there. These all look the same. This one goes over there. And then I got 4 little tiny screws, which I imagine are for the camera. And one of the handy things about having these silicone mats on your workbench is they're great for soldering because you can't burn them, but they have all these little cutouts and things to hold your screws and everything. So these are the motor screws. We'll start with them. These are the standoff posts for the ESC, and I got 3 other screws here that don't know what they're for, but I'll put them right over here. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to get some Loctite thread locker. I always use Loctite on the motor screws. That way you don't have to over tighten them, and the best way to use Loctite is to put a little blob of it down on a piece of plastic or something like that. And then what you do is you take your little screw and you just kind of dunk the little tip in it, and you'll get just enough on there. So I don't guess there's any top or bottom to this. I know there is a front and a rear, and I'll have to figure out whether this thing is the rear or that's the rear. And I can do that with the holes for the canopy. So the square side is the rear. So and this is not going to be real exciting, but let's start putting some motors on here. Okay. Cute little things. And then whenever you put motors, and I know that they size these screws properly, but you always want to take a look in here and make sure the screw isn't too long, sticking out and hitting somehow hitting the windings of the motor. That'll happen a lot of times in a kit that, and I think that screw was longer. Okay, that was a little longer screw. That screw matched this one in length for some reason. Okay. I mean, they're probably 1 millimeter difference in size, some of these screws. Yeah, that's better. All right. Normally in a video, I would fast forward through this at about 20 times normal speed, but you're going to have to, unfortunately, we're going to have to sit through this. Shouldn't take too long. So there's 4 screws in that motor, and we'll like to tighten them in kind of a torque pattern. Not too tight. There we go. Of course, you got to make sure the wire extended down the down the arm. Okay, next motor. What's going on in the chat? Nail biting TV. Carlos, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It is riveting. I could play you a little music while I'm doing that. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find you some. I'll just put my theme song on. There we go. Okay. Now we got a little background music to keep you guys entertained. Or I could show you a movie. Anyway, this is maybe the only boring part of this thing, would be screwing the motors in. Okay. I don't know if you guys heard or not, but Greg at Osby Drone tonight is going to do one of these fly-in. He did one once before where he has a live stream server set up and people around the world will live stream from their drones into his server, and he has kind of a live stream show, and I saw that he's going to have another one of them tonight. Unfortunately for us here in the States, even though it's morning over there or middle of the day over there in Australia, it's dark, so we can't be flying them. So what he suggested last time, I ended up taking one of my Mavic 2s and hanging it up here in the studio and live streaming from it, even though it wasn't going anywhere, which I thought was cool, but a little boring. Now, what I thought I might do tonight, and I don't know if he's going to get enough of a response to actually do it. He's probably still in bed over there, but I'm going to send him an email and tell him what I can do. Is I've come up, some of you guys have seen on my live stream, I've come up with a way to actually take the live FPV feed from one of my whoops and stream it out. And if he wants, I'll do that on his live stream and fly my little Tynyhawk all over the house live, where you get to see all the mistakes, all the furniture diving and ceiling bumping and everything else that goes with it. But so it may or may not be an interesting show. I don't know, but I'll be there, and I'm willing to do that if he's interested. Now, one of the problems with doing that is, unlike in a StreamYard show, where even though there may be a 30-second delay on the stream going out on YouTube, you can't talk to, you can't have a conversation with the host of the stream, because all you're hearing is what he said 30 minutes ago, or 30 seconds ago. So that's almost impossible. It makes it very, very difficult. So you basically just got to do your thing and not worry about what anybody's saying at his end, and not try to have a conversation or answer a question. And that's what I found difficult about participating in something like that. Was so we'll see. I've got the setup here through OBS and a video capture device to be able to bring in the output of a ground station receiver and bring it right into OBS. And if you guys somehow manage to stick around until the end of this thing, you'll get to see what the OSD looks like coming from this new little quad in real time, because I've got it all set up here and ready to go for that. Okay, so there we go. We now have the little teeny motors, and if you're wondering what the size of this thing is, for reference, here's a Tynyhawk. So you can see that the motor wheelbase is definitely bigger than a Tynyhawk, but it's not really that big, not that big of a quad. If we set a prop on here, isn't that adorable? So we put a prop on there. Compare it to the size of a Tynyhawk. It is bigger, but it's still a very tiny, light little thing that I think is going to be great for down the road, if, you know, being way under whatever weight limit they came up with. So you don't have to worry about having remote ID or any of that other nonsense on it. And hopefully it'll give me an experience of flying a bigger quad. Okay, so now this thing has an arrow on it right here that points to the front of the quad, and I would imagine that that's the top. So now we need to take, and I'm sure that's what these 4 screws are for, and put these little standoffs in. And about the only tool you need for this is a 1.5 millimeter hex driver. I think everything on this quad is that size. So we'll put that in, and that screws into plastic. I don't think I really need Loctite on that, but if I find that after a flight or two, I'll check them, and if they seem to be coming loose, I can always take them out and put some Loctite in. And this screw here that goes in the standoff is a little longer, just a little longer than the screws for the motors, and I can see why, because it wouldn't, I can see why you need the little longer screw here. So put the standoffs in there. And the 4th standoff here. Okay. At this point, I think I'm going to turn my soldering iron on and let it start to heat up, because I'm going to have to be doing some soldering here in a second. The little screw is the front. We'll put this down on here. Now they stick up awful high, and nothing mounts on top of these things. So I guess that's the way it's supposed to be. So we just put on the little plastic nuts, and they give you a bunch of these nuts. So I'm thinking that maybe you put 2 of them on to really lock it down. That's enough music while I'm busy talking here. How we doing, guys? Turn your music down a little. Okay, Jody, I did that. I'm a punk rocker, yeah. Yeah. Whoa, lost a nut. Where'd it go? All right. Don't worry about that now. I'm an old guy. I don't like all that punk rock music. I like jazz. Boy, I can't imagine some of these really big guys with big hands trying to build these tiny little things. Okay. So somewhere, there it is, I found it. Okay. On these plastic nuts that hold these controllers down, I don't like to try to over tighten them, and I usually just hand tighten them, because you got plastic threads and a little plastic nut, and I guess they'd be really easy to strip. So let's see how we're doing here. I do have a nut driver somewhere this size, but I'm not going to worry about it. Now, just because this thing has got plugs for the motors doesn't mean that the motors are going to be turning in the proper direction. because some motors need to be wired differently than others. And okay, so I think I'll put the second nut on top of it too, just to lock it down. Considering they give you, no, wait a minute, I better not, because I need 3 nuts for those big tall screws, so that's not what they meant. All right, so here we have it. We have this thing with the little flight controller on it and all these little wires. Let's see which way they go. They go with the little tabs on the plugs here to the downside. And when you plug these plugs in, if you look at the top of the plug, you notice that, and this is true of all these micro plugs, you do notice that the holes are always closer to one side than the other side. And when you look down into the pins, you'll see that the pins are much closer to one side than the other. And if you try to put it in upside down, it won't go in. So you got to make sure that you get it right, and that's right. And I'm still pushing a little harder than I'd like to on it, but it looks like the way it's supposed to go. So we'll now, something is not going in right there. And why is that? The pins are there. Pins are there. There it goes. Okay. And let's come out here so you guys can see. Hey, EBR, how you doing? Talking about me and my hands. Yeah, I was thinking about you, buddy. You mentioned the other night that with your big hands, it's too big for this. And I thought about that as I was screwing these tiny little things on here. For some reason, these things really are tight into the. Feels like you're almost doing something wrong, but there we go. And let's get them all in here. Okay, and hopefully we'll get the last one without bending up some pins, and we're in business. This is a much simpler build than the other Tyro kits. Uh-oh. Damn, the damn plug bent down. You see, it's always the last one that gets you. And why that isn't going in there as smooth, as easily as it should, I don't know. But if all else fails, use the pliers. So there we go. Okay, we got all 4 of them, and hopefully I didn't break something there. So there's all the motors. And now we have to solder the wires, and one of these says plus, I think. That's great. Where's the plus? Which one is the plus? Okay, I can see it from underneath. So they put the plus and minus underneath the board. So if you put the board on the quad, you can't see where the plus is. Well, that makes a lot of sense. But I can identify, looking at this thing through the magnifying glass at an angle here, that that's definitely minus, and that's definitely plus. So this, on the left side, right here, is the plus. So what we're going to do is we're going to tin up that pad. I think the first thing we need to do, considering there's little holes in there for the capacitor, gotta be careful you don't put these in backwards or hook all this stuff up backwards, or things will blow up. So let me show you this. If you've never soldered one of these capacitors, these little, you'll notice there's always one side that kind of has a gray stripe or something on it, and it says negative. It also just happens to be the shorter of the two leads. So I want to make sure that the negative here goes to the negative over here. So what I'm going to do is I want this capacitor to set here like this, and then I want the wires to come out on top of it. So I'm going to bend both of these things. I'm going to bend them down like that, and then I'm going to cut them off. And plus was on that side. I want to take another look just to make sure again that I see plus, because I don't want to hook this up backwards and smoke the board. Okay, that is plus on the left. So I've got my minus side here and my plus side there, and that's how I want the capacitor to sit. And I'm basically just going to tack that in and tin the pads at the same time. I want to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing here. So let's we'll solder on the iron to transfer the heat. I'm going to touch that part to the pad, and I'm going to let the solder flow onto the pad. And this is the negative one, and the negative one soaks up heat. So there you go. And then I'm going to come over here and do the same on the other side. And that ought to happen faster. And make sure that I get it enough where it solders in the capacitor too. And let me put a little more solder on this side. Okay, now these things are already tinned, but I'm going to tin them just a little bit more here. Just to make sure, because I don't know what kind of solder they're using over there in China, but I know it's probably not as good as my genuine Radio Shack, 30-year-old Radio Shack solder here. We'll tin these a little bit. And then, plus was on this side, so we're going to take heat the pad, heat that, let it set, let go. And then we'll do the same with the negative. Now I can breathe. Okay, so now we have the pigtail on there, and I think that that's what this thing is for down here, is to tie wrap that off, but we'll worry about that later. So that looks good, and that's all the soldering that we have to do on this whole build. So that even for beginners, if you got a soldering iron, that shouldn't scare you too badly. All right, so that ends the soldering adventure. And how are we doing for time? Well, we're not even in an hour yet. Okay, so that is that. Now, I'm going to take a break a second, come over here and say hi to everybody. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Get a drink of water. Catch up with the chat a little bit. Forgot the heat shrink tube, Mitch. Where did heat shrink it? You don't heat shrink. You don't need to heat shrink that. You don't need to heat shrink this that part of it. I could have, if I wanted, I could have put some heat shrink over the arms here to hold the wires down, but I'm not going to bother with that either. I'll just put a little tie wrap around them. But yeah, there we go. And it's nice they put those little holes in the pads. Yeah, it is, EBR. That's a nice little touch. It always is when you want to put a capacitor, because it does hold it in place. And then just because I'm paranoid about it, I'm going to make sure I got it in the right way. Again, yes, minus to black, that to red, and the positive. I'm going to go look one more time to see if I see the plus down there. And I do. Okay. I do have a smoke stopper that I'm going to use when I plug it in for the first time, though, and we'll talk about that when I get to that. All right. So that's all caught up with the chat, and back to work. Okay, now we got to figure out how all this crap goes together. I got the receiver here, so I think the receiver will lay down on top of here's where it's going to fit. And this is an RSXR that I had, and I've already bound it to my transmitter so that I don't have to deal with that today. This particular receiver comes with a plug on it. So what I have to do is I have to take these wires. I'm not done soldering, come to think of it. Here, okay, you'll see some heat shrink, Jody. We'll get some heat shrink action going here. But I have to splice these together. So let's do that now and get that out of the way. So here's the receiver, and we're going to cut that to here, and we're going to cut the doesn't need to be very long, so we'll cut this here, and get me some heat shrink. From the big box O heat shrink. Can I use this really tiny stuff? I think I can. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. All right, so we're gonna need 3 of these. So let's just make 3 pieces of this. And 3 pieces of heat shrink onto there. And strip these wires. Okay, so red goes to red. Am I in the frame here? Yeah, I guess I am. Let me push this up here a little bit. Red goes to red. And I like to solder them before I go on to the next one. Okay. And black. Let's slide the heat shrink over this. Okay, black. Goes to black. And green goes to yellow because those are the only 2 that are left. And that will be the S-bus lead. Color is irrelevant. Okay, now I hope I'm done with the soldering. And the heat shrink. And now we take the heat gun. Oh, well, what? Just lost. Sorry about that, guys. Just lost the microphone. What fell? Oh, I see. I knew that was going to happen at some point. Something was going to get hooked on something. The microphone was going to hit the ground. So I guess you can still hear me even though the mic's on the ground. Let me get it flipped back on again. Okay, I'm back. And it's a heat gun. Little heat gun, $11, $12 at Amazon. What a deal. And we take and shrink the heat shrink. Okay, so this is what we have here. Let me zoom in on that little thing so you can see what I did. We have the red to red, black to black, and green to green, and the heat shrink tubing on there. So now I can twist this. See, we got somebody new just popped into the chat. So I like to twist these things. And there we go. So now I got the receiver connected. And who we got there? Rick DeWeert. Hello, my friend. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. Honestly, guys, I got a much bigger audience than I ever thought I'd get for something like this today on a Friday afternoon in the middle of the day. But thanks for coming in. Thanks for sticking with me. We've only been at it an hour, and we're sneaking up on it here. Rick, I'm going to give you a blue wrench so you can be like everybody else. And thanks for coming in, man. Hope you enjoy all the breathtaking action that's going on here today. All right, let's see. So now I still got a bag of screws. I have no idea what they're for. Doesn't appear to be for anything, because all I got to do is mount the stuff into here. So the way this works here, evidently, is this little puppy tie wraps to this little shelf back here. I imagine that the antenna would be up. So we'll use some double-sided tape to hold that, and then the camera has to be installed down in here, and then when that's all done and the receiver goes underneath, and this little thing just screws down up into this canopy here like that. So let's start by mounting the camera. Seems to be the logical thing to do. And there, it appears that there are two sets of screws, one further back than the other. So let's put the camera in right side up here, like this, and see which set of screws we want to use. So the camera slides in between the plastic like that, and pardon my head, but I want to try to see if I can see where the screw holes are. It appears that the back hole would be the way to go. So let me get a screw here and see if I can find the hole in the camera. Doesn't help that all this stuff is black. Well, there it goes. Now if I put it in the back hole, I'm probably going to get as much tilt as I need from it. I don't think I need, and it looks like in the back hole the camera is going to be better protected. So I'm going to use the back hole, but I can always move it to the front hole. And it just didn't seem like that was a long enough screw. Didn't seem like it bit in there too much, but we'll try this one and see. We'll put it in the back hole here. It feels like it's in there. Tight. And I don't think that's gone anywhere. That's pretty well protected too. And this is this isn't a 3D print. This is an injected molded piece, and it's pretty tough. It's pretty rigid. I think it'd offer quite a bit of protection. to the camera. Whether it's going to be easy to get the lens cap on and off, I don't know, but yeah, I can get it off with my fingernails. All right, so that takes care of the camera. Now we got to figure out how we want to mount the VTX back here. And there is a shelf, and there's a, you can see it, there's a slot under down below here to put a zip tie in. You can see that. So that's nice, but I don't know which side this thing is, which way it is up on this thing. The wire's on the bottom like that, so that evidently is not the way it's going to mount. I would imagine it's like this. You've got that push button. You got this little push button here, which if you put it in here like this, you can't get to the push button. Although that seems to be the way that that it fits the best, and you got to make sure. See what I'm mounting down on the bottom here. I think and of course there's not a single picture of this, so let me go over here and pull up a picture of this thing and see if I can't get a clue from some of the pictures. Let's see here. Let's make this bigger, and let's see if I can get a clue as to which way that thing here. Maybe on this picture I can see it. It appears that the antenna is on top of that thing. Let me grab the... Okay, it appears that the antenna is on the top, and that would mean the wires are on the bottom, which means it sets down, the wires are underneath of this thing. There it is, that shows me. Well, that doesn't show a tie wrap or anything on there. That just shows the, that shows I'm looking to see where the push button. Hang with me, guys. Okay, it looks like the push button is buried in there with the wire underneath. Okay, so looks like it mounts. I get the wire probably goes under here like this, maybe. Maybe the wire goes like that. That seems to make the most sense. All right, let's do it like that. So let's just take a little piece of this foam tape. Now I'm not going to use the, since I'm clamping it down with a tie wrap, I'm not going to use the real high sticky stuff. I'm going to use the fatter, cushier foam tape, because there are a bunch of components all over the bottom of this little thing. So we're going to take And we're going to put this little piece of foam tape right under here like this. And we're going to stick it right back here. Like that. You can see what I'm doing here? Hi, Spike. Hey, Spike, how you doing? Put it back in the hole. Here, it's in time. I miss you, Spike. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Good to see you. I can't make heads or tails of what you're saying here. Jog around my shed. Have a great weekend, my friends. Yeah, you too, Spike. I'll catch you on Saturday night. Thanks for coming in, buddy. So that goes like that, and then we can take and we can put a tie wrap around it like this. And it doesn't need to be too tight because it's not going anywhere. So there you go. Who needs instructions, huh? We don't need those stinking instructions. Okay, so we got the camera mounted, got the receiver on there. We got the we got to plug the camera back into the board. Make sure I remember where the camera went. The camera, the VTX rather. I think it said VTX here somewhere. Yep, it says VTX right next to this plug. So we'll make sure that it is in the proper direction. And the VTX is plugged in, and the camera's in there, and now the front goes there's a little arrow right here which points this way. So that's the front. So that goes like this. And what's weird is the VTX wire is coming out of that side, and that's the front, and that seems a little snug. It's just long enough. The camera, let's do this again. Now I'm wondering, this is another thing where I don't know. Do these plugs go up like this? Does it mount in here with this side up, or does it mount in here with the, okay, the USB port is going to be a clue because there's the cutout right here. Right here there's a cutout in the plastic, and that has to match up with the USB port. So this is the way it has to go. And then this goes down to the ESC. So the camera wire can go back here like this. The VTX wire seems to get stretched across. And there's 3 screws to hold down the flight controller board. So let's get the VTX wire around the post. Like that. And there's that is where the receiver goes. S-bus, that's correct. Okay. And that hole lines up, and that hole lines up, but there's something. It might be the camera. It's bumping up against the camera in there. Well, I guess I'm going to move the camera forward. Instructions would be nice. But like I said, we all speak Chinese, I guess. It's a shame that this is so time consuming, this one part of it. So let's move this camera forward a little. And maybe that'll leave room for the board in there. Whoops, nowhere near the hole. Oh. Where is the friggin' hole? There it is. Got it. Okay. Missing the hole here somehow. Oh. Whoop. Come on, baby. What am I missing here? Missing something. Sorry, guys. Well, it looks like it's lined up in there. For some reason, I am just not catching this screw on this side of the camera. Yeah. Try a little longer screw. Maybe that'll work. There we go. Okay. That looks like a good camera tilt. So let's see if that makes this board fit, or maybe I have to reroute some of these wires around. So let's pull the camera wire out for right now and get it out of the way. and see why this board is not fitting down in there the way it should. So the USB port has to be right here. Well, one of the things I've noticed here is that the VTX, the wire for the video transmitter, is really too short, a little bit too short, and so that goes in there like that. It does stretch that wire a little bit because the plug for that is way up here in the front. But that goes in there, and the camera, I unplugged the camera for right now, and the camera plugs in to the side, but that does fit over the camera. So you just have to get that VTX wire around the back of this post right here. So let's plug the camera in right now and see if we can't keep the get that camera wire out of the way. This is really tightly engineered. So the camera goes into this side right here, like this, and it goes in like, there's the little arrow to the front, so it goes in like this with the USB port at the notch right there. And so let's get that camera wire out of the way for right now. I'll just pull it right up through the camera hole and get it out of the way so it's not under the board. And then stuff the VTX wire down in there, and then there it is. Whoa. All right, so that's down in there now. And before it goes anywhere, let's put a few screws in it. So I'm guessing that it's supposed to be these short little screws, which I used for the camera, and that was the wrong one. So let's now, for some reason, I'm not threading into anything. Now, let's try a different one. This is the trickiest part of building this stupid thing, is getting this little controller board. I really like controller boards that mount on the stack, to tell you the truth. As opposed to this, but this is the way they do it, so that's in there. And let's get a second one in. It threads right into the plastic hole, and there's one more in the back. Okay. All right. Let me zoom in on that so you can see what I got here. Give you an idea of what it looks like. So that board fits right into there, and you gotta carefully get all the wires in the right place. Now we can take this camera wire and just stuff it in there out of the way underneath the camera. There we go. Okay. All right. It is tight. It's a tight little fit. So you got to mount the camera in the forward holes. There's just no doubt about it. Otherwise, you'll never get the board will hit the bottom of the camera. So you can forget that. So we got two wires sticking out here now. We got the receiver. It's actually already connected. So we just have this wire here, and all we got to do now is connect this up to the flight controller board. And before I actually mount the just connects the flight controller and the ESCs together. And at this point, before I actually physically mount this onto here, I'm going to check it out. Going to get it all plugged in, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over here in front of my computer, and if you guys will excuse me, I'll be right back. I need to go get my smoke stopper. Oh no, I got it right here. Okay. I'll show you what that looks like. The smoke stopper is it's just a bulb, and I've made two different size pigtails for it, one for XT30 and one for XT60. And what that does is if there's a really high current flow when you plug it in, it goes through the light bulb, so the light bulb will light, and it'll draw the voltage way down, keep you from flying your flight controller. So what I want to do before we hook it up to the computer, I'm going to bring it back over here. I'm going to lay it out here like a dead duck. I'm going to take the lens cap off, and I want to do, the first thing you always want to do is you want to do a continuity check first, just to make sure you don't have a dead short somewhere. So we got this thing set up here as continuity checker, and I'm going to check across the battery leads. Nothing. So we don't have a dead short. Then I'm going to take, I gotta go get a battery. So I'll be right back. Okay, I got myself a little 3-cell 450 here. Like, anybody new come in here since I last looked? No. All right, so I got a 4-cell 350, and what I'm going to do is plug it in to the smoke stopper, and then plug it into this and see what happens. Wish me luck. I see lights. No smoke. I had a red light flashing on the flight controller board, and everything looks good. My light is not lit here, so that's okay. So I think maybe I might just, for convenience sake, put that canopy on. So we got the screw, we got the rubber standoff, long screw here, rubber standoff, and I'm missing a rubber standoff. Where did it go? Couldn't have gone too far. Well, that's silly. I know I had 3 of them. Okay, gang, where did you get to? Well, that kind of sucks, but what I can do is just use a few extra nuts and not have the standoff and just use nuts. It'll turn up somewhere. It rolled somewhere. I don't know how far it could have gotten on the bench here, but we'll tighten that in here. We'll put another nut up on top like this. And now we take this, and the front of the quad is here, so we take that and put it as twist the wires that go to that thing, and see if we got room. Yeah, we got room for the receiver right under there. So we'll take the receiver and we will put it, we'll just stick it right down there. Well, let me get another little piece of foam tape. Now, I've already bound this receiver to the transmitter, so I hope it remembers it. Otherwise, I got to take this all apart and cut that heat shrink off and rebind it. So we'll stick this right down to there, and then this goes on the front like this. Oh, it actually screws in to the canopy. Cool. Well, that doesn't make any sense. There we go. Okay. All right. So that all fits down on there. Put a nut up top. Not enough room for the receiver down there. Okay. Rethink that. maybe that's the only trouble with little teeny things like this, is making everything fit. That's still... See, another thing I'm going to have to do here is of course, this one hole here, it happens to be too small. The other ones slide over, this one doesn't. And this is the one that I've got the nut under. Don't you love it when a plan comes together? This receiver evidently is much fatter than an XM Plus, because it's got that the plug on it. So I'm wondering if maybe putting it in here sideways like this might work better. It's got that big connector on it. Oh, let's see if sideways doesn't work better. I think so. I think that might be the answer. Nope. It's hitting the USB plug now. Well, I'm wondering if I actually connect it or get it tucked up in under the canopy here, if that'll work better. Let's see which way this thing might fit better. These are the things when you watch these guys that do the build videos that are 10 minutes long. All this stuff ends up on the cutting room floor, of course, which I can understand that. I can understand that. But this is what it's really like fooling with these things, you know. Trying to, I can only imagine what they go through when they build like a Tynyhawk, trying to get all that stuff to fit in where it belongs. I think will it fit? I think one of the things I have to do is I have to snip off these. I think these things are sticking up. The screws are sticking up too high. The plastic screws, and they're hitting things. So we'll snip them off. And let's see how it looks without the receiver in there. Let's see. It goes like that. See how much room I actually have in there. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, guys, for the sake of finishing this up right now. I'm going to just leave the receiver hanging out there. I may, and we'll get the rest of it done and get all the setup in the radio and all that done so that at least it's ready to go, and then I can come back and I'll just figure out where to fit the receiver in this thing, or I may have to go to an XM Plus receiver, which is smaller, or at worst I may end up just taking that plug-in socket off of that thing and soldering the receiver wires directly to the receiver. Get rid of this big plug here, which is what's really causing all the problems and where there's not enough room. But there, other than a receiver hanging out, that's what it's going to look like. So the USB port on this thing is under here, and now I can understand why they give you this little adapter. So let's try to plug that little adapter in there and see how that works. Okay, so that just plugs right in there, and I don't guess you leave it in there. You probably take it off when you fly, but so there we go. So let's plug it back into the battery and make sure everything lights up, and then we'll go over to Betaflight and we'll check the motor directions and the receiver and everything else. Okay, so everything does light up, no short circuits. So we're going to take it over here to the Betaflight screen and see if I still got anybody hanging in here with me. I do, 14 people. Let me take a quick look at the chat here. And so other than that, other than the receiver hanging out of it, guys, it's a cute little quad. It's just adorable, man. Look at the size. Look at the size of it. It's just teeny. Carbon fiber frame. And there is room under there for that receiver. It's not. There's no room for it with that big connector on it. So I won't bother putting you through the agony of all that. 616, how you doing, man? I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome. EBR still here. Carlos is retracting messages. USB goes on the bottom, he thinks. And where did the USB end? The USB ended up on the bottom. Yes, sir. That's where it ended up. So evidently I got it in here. Hey Mel, how you doing? Reprint of housing with standoffs built in to make it sit just no. I mean I could just add taller standoffs on the sides and get it up a little higher. That wouldn't be a problem, but I wanted to try to build it just like it is right now. This is not a big deal. I just need to get rid of that big plug on there and just solder the receiver wires directly to the receiver, and it'll slide right in there with no trouble at all. But right now what I want to do is I want to get Betaflight up here. So let me do this. Let me load Betaflight and then go over to that screen so you guys can see Betaflight. And we will plug in the USB port to the top of that little adapter. And it found it, which is good. And we're going to go to connect. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I'm going to get my radio transmitter over here, turn it on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And I have a model already set up, and I don't create a separate model for every quad. I have a model set up for D16 Betaflight quads, which is what this is. So I've already bound to that model. So we're going to turn it on, and it's actually giving me an RSSI reading. So that means that maybe the receiver is turned on.
Telemetry lost.
Yeah, it is. Because
Telemetry recovered.
when I move the radio right next to the quad, it gets too close, it swamps it. So let's go over here and go into the receiver tab. Okay, and TAER is my mapping. Some of them use AETR. If you see this little quad, I probably need to plug in. I don't seem to be getting a receiver signal. Let me go to my configuration and make sure that that's set to S-Bus, and let me go into my ports, and UART1 is set to serial RX, so that should be working. And I go to receiver. I may have to power up the quad. The flight controller is not powered up. Uh-oh. All right, guys. Something is not right. And check this out. Oh, you know what it is? It's that stupid little adapter. If I move the quad, I don't like that adapter. Let's go to ports. Says RX1 is the receiver, and I have to imagine that's the receiver because that's the way it's plugged in. And I do have, if I unplug it, it does tell me that
Telemetry lost.
it loses telemetry, which means the receiver is working.
Telemetry recovered.
And connect again, plug power in. It's showing me battery voltage. Ports, configuration, receiver. I'm not getting anything from the receiver. And I should be. Well, I think, guys, I may have a bad receiver here. It was an older receiver that I had laying around, and I thought it was working, but I hadn't tested it. So it's possible that I got a bad receiver. And if I have a bad receiver, I can't finish this. Now my throttle does show that it's down, but am I set on the right radio here? Hold on, maybe I bound it to the wrong. Well, I have a dead battery, 16 says. No, it's not dead. If you look up here on top of Betaflight, it says 12.2 volts. It's reading the battery voltage. What I have is a receiver that for some reason isn't, and this is a D16 Betaflight Quad. Select the model. I'm getting an RSSI back from the receiver, so the transmitter is seeing the receiver, but the flight controller is not seeing the receiver for some reason. Although the throttle, it is showing the throttle at low. I have everything set correctly. I have the mapping set correctly. I'm just getting nothing in from the receiver. I think I have a bad receiver there, and I think I'm going to have to go ahead and replace it with a different receiver. And if that's the case, guys, that's all I can do today. I can check the motor directions, however, so let's do that. So let's go to the motor tab and see if the motors spin. Whoa, cool. They do. So let's see if the motors, uh-oh, 3 of the 4 are spinning. There we go. Something is not right here. I may have a bad motor. Or it's not D-Shot 600. I don't think. Let me try D-Shot 300 and see. All right, let's see which motors. Motor 1 is spinning. Now something is not right here. All right, I got a bunch of troubleshooting to do, guys, and sorry about that. Unfortunately, don't buy this kit until I'm finished, and I tell you it's worth it. Let me unplug it, and the good news is I got something else to fly in the meantime while I'm fixing it. So at any rate, that's going to try D8 on radio. I did. Oh shit! Thanks, guys. There was that's why the radio is not working. Jody's got it right. There is a tiny little jumper on this friggin' board that you have to jumper, but that doesn't tell me why the motors weren't spinning right. So that's one thing. But I can go back over here, and I can open this thing up again. Let's get there. Saying this is what happens when you don't have instructions. But it just dawned on me when you said S-Bus. There is on all of these Eachine boards, they have a tiny little tab that you have to solder. If it's an S-Bus receiver, you connect, you bridge 2 of them, and if it's a PWM receiver, you bridge the others. And I'm hoping it's on the bottom here, or else I got to take this board out again. Let me pull this out here. I think I'm going to have to take the board off again. RSSI. I don't see the bridge on this side of the board. Well, unplug that. If you remember when I started the stream, I said that don't be surprised if I wasn't taking things apart again. Okay. There it is. All right, I'm going to show you where this is here. I'm going to zoom in real close as I can. Having built some of these Tyro models before, I should have remembered that, but I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here there are 3 tiny little pads, and you have to solder you have to bridge the two to the left for S-bus, and I didn't do that. So the other one is PPM. So I have to do that right now. And this is always a tricky little thing to do. Let me unplug the receiver while I'm at it. And put some weight on this thing so it stays put. Rick Halber's here. How you doing, Rick? Good to see you. Arizona drone dude, how you doing? And nothing ever goes as planned, but I suppose that that's what this building stuff is all about. So you can, it's one thing to watch a build that everything goes perfectly, but when you watch a build where, especially on a quad like this with no instructions, you find out what it's like, and troubleshooting and everything else. Hey Ed, how you doing? Love my drones. Mark Lilo, how you doing? Welcome to my stream, or my catastrophe today. Give you a blue wrench. John Cuppy is here. Hey man, we're getting a big crowd in here at 5 o'clock while the old guy is trying to figure out how to make all this crap work. Okay, so heat up the soldering iron, and we go in there and we try to bridge this thing without getting solder all over the place. And I don't know if you have any idea how tiny this is, but there's the tip of the soldering iron. You can see the size of these tiny little tabs I'm working with. So I need to bridge these two. Okay, I can hardly see them. I got some solder on them now, but did I bridge them? No, I don't think so. No, I got some solder on them, but I didn't bridge them yet. Getting that, believe it or not, when you want solder to jump across 2 terminals, it does it all the time until you want it to. All right, let's see if we can bridge these 2. There, I think I got it now. And you almost have to have a jeweler's loop to see these things. Nope, still not bridged. Wow. Oh, there we go. I think I got a big glob of solder on it now. Still not bridged. Okay. I don't know. You guys can't see what I'm doing. Let me at least get you in the picture here. All right. I've had fun with trying to bridge these things before. Come on. There we go. I think I got it that time. Yes. As long as I didn't As long as I didn't bridge something I didn't want to bridge. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a little Q-tip, a little alcohol, wipe the flux off of it so I can see if I got it right or not. Make sure I didn't bridge all three of them. Okay. All right, let's see if that fixed that. I don't need to put the quad all together to see if I fixed it or not. We will turn the radio on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
We will plug the flight controller back in. To the quad here. Sorry if you guys can't see this. I'm over here by the computer. Okay, so we do that. Then we plug the USB into the flight controller. I need a receiver. That would be handy. Plug the receiver in to the flight controller. Okay, now we'll try this again. Okay, so we do have a receiver. Now let's go here to Betaflight, connect, go to my receiver tab. Hey, it's working. See, I've got on aux 6, I've got RSSI. So aux 6 is where the RSSI signal is. So I'm going to tell it that the RSSI is on aux 6. And if I move my stick to the right, yaw to the right, yaw to the left, pitch up, pitch down, yaw, throttle, aux 1 should be my arm switch, and aux 2 is going to be my mode switch, and aux 3 is going to be my beeper. So that was all set up in the radio as a standard setup that I use for all of my quads. So every quad I have, aux 1 is always set. And I create a kind of a standard model in the radio. And once I get the endpoint set to 2,000, 1,000, 1,500 in the middle, I just keep, I call that receiver 0, and I keep binding, I bind all my receivers that are the same type to one model that uses that type of receiver. And this one I call a D16. And that means that every time I build a quad, I don't have to reset up my radio. I know that my throttle is going to be on this channel, my endpoints are going to be correct at 1,000, 2,000, and I know that my aux switches, and we'll show you, Rick, when you come in on Sunday, we'll show you how to set up the radio to make sure that aux 1 does that, aux 2 does that. So then, now that I got a receiver, I can go into my modes tab, and on arming, I want aux 1 to arm. And you can see there's a little tab here, and when I move the aux1 switch, that tab moved to the far end. Okay, so that for me is disarmed, the position. This for me is armed. So I will slide the yellow area here up to that end. And what that means is when the little tab is outside of that orange area, it's basically switched off. When it's inside that area, it's basically switched on. So that's how I will know that that's on. Now, the mode switch I have on aux2. So when I hit this to aux2, when I move the mode switch, you see the little tab move to there and to there. Well, I want angle mode to be at the top part of the switch. So that means that when the switch is at the top, it's in angle mode. Any other time on the modes, when you're not specifying a particular mode, the quad's going to go into acro mode. So I want angle mode to be here, and I can set up horizon mode, although I don't fly it very often. I can say add range. When I move the aux2 switch, it automatically fills that in. In the center position here, I want the quad to be in horizon mode, and then when it's at the full down position and it's out of that range, that'll mean it's in acro mode. So with this switch, at this position it picks up angle mode, at this position it picks up horizon mode. Another switch that I want to do is I want to have my beeper. So we will find just beeper right here. We'll add range for the beeper, and that's my aux3 switch. And when I pull the beeper switch up, it goes all the way up to here, and so that will make my motors beep. Hit save. So you can see now when I move this switch, disarmed, it won't let it arm when it's plugged into Betaflight, but you can see that that's turning that on. This switch is angle, second position is horizon, third position is neither of those, which means acro mode. And just for grins, I like to always make sure that I turn air mode on when I'm in acro range. So let's find air mode here. We'll add range, and I want aux2 here, which is my mode switch, so that when aux2 is in acro mode, that air mode is on. Even if I have it permanently enabled, if for some reason that's not set right, this will always make sure I'm on with air mode. And what air mode does is it makes sure that your propellers never really come to a stop when you pull back on the throttle. Otherwise they tend to fall out of the sky when you're trying to make a hard maneuver one way or the other, and it would have to lower the RPM in one motor down way too far where it stops providing lift. So air mode kind of always keeps it above a certain RPM so that that doesn't happen. So there you go. That's the settings that I need for that. Configuration here. There's a setting down here that says air mode on all the time, permanently enable. I normally don't. If I'm in angle mode, I usually leave air mode off. So I'll leave that off. These are your beepers, which tell it to make the motors beep when you're when you hit the beeper switch. Not that this is going to be that loud. So let me plug in the battery to this thing, and I got a receiver, and it is beeping. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's not real loud. It's not loud enough to mean anything. So that's really all the setup I would need. And if I wasn't having a problem with the motors, let me try the motors one more time here, now that I got it all spread out, wires everywhere on the bench. Let's go back in and go to configuration, and it was set at D-Shot 600, so let's set it back at that. Go back in, go to motors, tell it to spin the motors. A couple of them are spinning, a couple of them don't want to spin. 2 of the 4 motors are spinning fine, and the other 2 are doing weird things. So I either got a bad ESC board or some bad motors or something, but that's something that's going to take a little bit of investigation, guys. So unfortunately, that's about all I can do right now. But if the motors were good, I would have checked the direction of the motors. I'll do a little research on the what I find out and tell you all what I found out about why the motors weren't working right. There's no way that it can be plugged in wrong. It just basically has a little three-prong pin, unless there's something wrong with those little connectors to the motors. But I'm going to have to experiment with trying to identify if I have bad motors, and if I do, I'll have to put in a warranty claim with it. But other than that, I was kind of hoping that it would be ready to fly when we were done here today, but I don't guess so. So anyway, we got the receiver working, we got the mode things working. Who gave me that clue about the jumper? Whoever that was, I appreciate it. Check the motor connection plugs, Vidar says. They're here, let me.
Receiver still connected.
Let me come back over here, clean up some of the mess here, show you what we got here. These little plugs here, I didn't like the way they went in, and I don't like the way they feel. And it may be that they're just not. Oh God, look at that. Look at that. Let me see if I can show you guys what I just noticed. Let me see if I can zoom in close enough so you can see this. Right here. Right there. The yellow wire pin has come out of the plug. See that? Ha! The yellow, that pin has come out of the plug, which will explain why that motor was jittering back and forth. And on this one, here, it appears that the black wire, I can see the plug sticking out. This one is okay, and this one is okay. So what we got here is a plug where the pin popped out. I'm almost wondering if it wouldn't be better just to solder these wires right to those tabs, but I'm going to stick with the plug here. So let's put the plug back in, the pin back in the plug here, and this goes this way. Well, you need tiny little hands for this. So this goes in here like that. That plug is in now. Okay. Let's see if I can plug it back in and actually have the pin. Let me check out the pin and see if it's bent or something in there. It's very hard to see in this light. Now they look like they're okay. But let's see if I can plug this back in here and not have the pin pop out. I didn't like the way these connectors felt when they went in the first place. Now that yellow one is not going on the pin. It's got a bad... I really can't see the pin, but it... For some reason, that's just pushing it out of the plug. That shouldn't be popping out like that. Well, we'll give it one more try here. Okay, I did get it on that time. I got that in. It looks like it's in all the way. All we can do is try it. And then there was one where it looked like the black wire wasn't plugged in all the way. That one looks okay. If these wires weren't so short, I would cut the stupid plugs off and solder them to the solder tabs right there. I think this is a Mickey Mouse way out. I think they should have given you long enough wires and just soldered them and not tried to make it that easy. Let's see. Let's see if I can. This might be a little crazy to try, but I'm going to try to push the metal part in of the pin from the back here. That seemed to push them in. Okay. I think it's a good idea to twist the wires like that. I hadn't thought of that before, but I think that's a good idea to take up some of the slack in these wires. Man, I got 17 people watching me suffer here. That's great. Thanks for coming in, guys. I really appreciate it. I don't know if I'm a little embarrassed about how this is going or not, but there are issues with this kit. There's no doubt about it, and I think that these plugs are one of them. I really think these plugs are a real serious issue with this kit. I don't like them. I wouldn't do it this way. I would much rather make sure that I would much rather be able to physically solder those wires to the ESC. And I know what Eachine's trying to accomplish with this. I know they're trying to make this a simpler kit, but since you got to solder anyway with it, and you got to have solder anyway, and you got to have soldering tools. May as well put slightly longer wires on the motors and solder them properly. And that way they're not going to come out. They're not going anywhere. But so one thing we discovered is don't forget to bridge the S-bus pad on the flight controller. Again, this is a kit that comes with 0 instructions. Nothing. I honestly don't think that anybody who's never put together a quad before or configured one would have much luck with this without having a video like this say, see, here's all the mistakes that I made, so you don't have to make them yourself. Here's all the shit that I forgot. Okay, so they look like they're all in there now, and I like the fact the wires are twisted. It takes up all that slack that's in them. That looks better. Well, the proof is in the pudding, guys. So let's take, I got it here. Let's take it over here. And we'll take all this, plug it all up again. And so we need to plug the flight controller back into the ESC. Right here. Okay, flight controller into the ESC, the USB port into the flight controller. Plug the battery in. Turn the receiver on. Well, I don't even, now, may as well turn it on anyway.
Welcome to OpenTX.
Okay, so now we'll go back over here to Betaflight, and we'll connect it again, and go to the motors tab and plug the battery in, and let's cross your fingers, guys, all 15 of you. Motor 1. Turning, and it is motor 1, and it is, so now I'm checking to see what direction it's turning in, and it is turning in the correct direction. So that's motor 1 is working. Now let's try motor 2. Motor 2 is working, and it is turning in the correct direction. So we got 2 out of 2 so far, which means the next 2 motors have to be backwards, because I never get them all right. So that's turning in the right direction. Motor 3 is still not working, and motor 4 is turning backwards. So motor 3 still isn't working right. But we got 3 out of 4 working now. No, it's only got it's only getting two wires, and it may be. All right, so motor 3 isn't working. Motor 4 is the left front motor, and it is spinning. It is spinning backwards. Okay, so I don't know. So what I need to do right now is I need to see if I can figure out why motor 3 isn't working. So let's go back over here. Unplug the quad, take it back over here. Okay, and motor 3, which is this motor here, wasn't working. And you know what? That might be the one that I bent the connector down and screwed it up. So I think what I need to do with this motor here is, I think I broke this connector when I was trying to plug it in the first place, and that's the one that, and the pins got bent and the connector. So that's really my fault, because I couldn't get the connector to connect. But I think I may be able to straighten the pins out enough that they'll go on the connector properly. So let's see if I can do that. It's like rocket surgery, guys. In case you don't know what rocket surgery is, it's a cross between brain surgery and rocket science. Okay, the pins are there, and I gotta bet they're connected. The plastic housing, I really did a number on it, but that looks like they're lined up, and the connector looks okay. So let's see if I can't very carefully get this in there and get all those pins down on their into the right holes. Well, it feels like they went in. All right, let's try it. Back to Betaflight. Plug in the flight. Plug in the USB port. And it was motor number 3, which is this one back here. Okay. Connect. Motors. It's working. And it's backwards. No, wait a minute. No, it's not backwards. Yes, it is backwards. So motor number 3 is backwards. So I got them all working. Hey, hey. Look at that, guys. Perseverance. All right, so let's check the motor directions again, just to make sure. Motor 1 is turning in towards the rear. Motor 2, which is the right front motor, is turning counterclockwise. Motor 3, which is the left rear motor, is turning clockwise, and it needs to be turning, so that needs to be reversed. And motor 4 is turning counterclockwise, and that needs to be reversed. So I need to reverse motors 3 and 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect that of Betaflight. I'm going to go in here to find my I'm going to find BL Heli. I want to get my BL Heli configurator going, launch the app. I want to connect to it. I want to read my setup. Now, I needed to reverse motor 3 and motor 4. I need to write my setup. Disconnect. Close that out. Go back into Betaflight. Connect again. Go back to motors. Tell it that I don't have any props on. I'm going to start all the motors real slowly. Any noises you hear are the motors. They're all running, and I'm going to check the direction of all the motors. So let's see here, which is the front of the quad. So this is motor 1, is turning in towards the front. That's turning in. This is turning in, and that's turning in. So all my motors are running in the right direction. So guess what, guys? Hey. How do you like that? Actually got everything working. So let me shut the motors off here just for fun, and disconnect that of Betaflight and unplug the battery and the USB port. Okay, so we solved all the problems. So all I can tell you is if you want to build one of these things, you got to be really careful about that. Those motor plugs, they're terrible. They were, the first time I put them in, they were very tight, very hard to put together. to get them to seat right. I managed to pop the on one of them. I destroyed the plug, the connector, and I was pushing way harder than I would ever comfortably push trying to get a connector in. EBR says, now rip it. Problem solved under extreme audience pressure. Well, that's why I love you guys. That's why I have you guys here. You know, keep me honest. So what I need to do now, and it's something I'll do offline, is rewire the receiver, get rid of that big connector on there, solder the wires directly, put some thinner heat shrink on it. And there's another thing that I did notice is that if I'm going to show you this. If you look at, and I did watch a, you know, I won't say I cheated, but I did watch a build video from one of the guys on this thing before I bought it. So, you know, I had some idea of what the problems were. But one of the things he pointed out was there's space down in here between the connector from the motor and the board. So what he did was he actually put some shorter standoffs in here to bring this board down lower. Now, since the height of the top canopy is determined by these posts that are here, that'll leave more room between the two boards. So I think before when I'm ready to make my final assembly, I think I'm going to do that and put some shorter standoffs. I already showed you guys that I have bought these packages of different size plastic parts and standoffs, and I can see right here that I have a much shorter standoff than what came with the kit. So I think that I'm going to do that. Or worst comes to worst, just cut the stand. You can cut the standoffs down or file them down about a 1/16 of an inch, and get this board right here to get this board so that these connectors are flush up against the carbon fiber, and is flimsy, not as flimsy, but I don't like the. I think that'll also help add some support to that, and that may solve all the problems. But we worked through the issues, troubleshot it, found out why things weren't working like they were supposed to, and I think the outcome is that with another half hour of work on my part, I'll probably have this thing ready to fly, and you guys will certainly see the results of that. But here we have another 2.5 hour live stream. Wow. So let me look at the chat here. I get myself another glass of wine. Yeah, it's so small. Take it through the house. You know, Jody, if I don't like to fly, I'd hover it in here. You know, I'll hover it, but I don't want to fly a prop with no prop guards in the house and have it run into one of my TV screens or something and destroy all kinds of things, or tear up the drywall or whatever else they can do. This is a little quad primarily for outside, so that it's small enough where it's not going to bother anybody, and it's light enough where you're not going to have to worry about any remote ID or all that other crap. Just fly it where you want it. So guys, that's it. I think we've solved all the problems. Right now it's just a matter of getting that, reconfiguring a few things to get that receiver in there, and I don't I'm tired, and I don't want you guys to have to sit through all that as well. So let me see who I still got here. I got 14 people here. Drone Shots is here. Jody, Ed will grab another beer. Vidar's getting another wine. You know, you guys are, I'm contributing to future alcoholics of America here with this. Gary, didn't see you there. Brand Ariels is here. How you doing, my friend? Yeah, 2.5 hours solo, no help from anybody. EBR, now rip it. I will. And John Cuppy is here. Dazra's still hanging around, man. Thanks, guys, for hanging in here for 2.5 hours with me. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the 100 kroners. My friend, thank you so much for that a little earlier. I never had any kroners before, so it's always a first. Let me go back in the chat here. Rick Halber wants me to loop it. Ed is still here. Rick, Sky FPV, thank you for coming in. If you're still around, I still got 14 people in here. So how was the audio, guys? Was the audio? I want you to tell me something. I'm right now talking into this little lavalier mic right here, this little lav mic, and it's not a wireless. It's got a wire, and I want you to do something. Now this, I'm gonna bring in my regular mic here, and I'm gonna switch over to it. Okay, now is the audio in this mic really that much better than the audio in this mic? Or is the audio in this mic acceptable? Drone Shot says good. So this is a little Comica, and it has an XLR jack on it, and it's a powered mic. It needs to have phantom power to it. So it's designed more for professional use, but it wasn't. It was one they sent me for free to review, and I did a review of it. Gary says they're the same. Okay, but as long as it's acceptable, when I'm doing these workbench type things, to have to keep swinging that other mic back and forth and be tethered to headphones is really cumbersome. So this has a long enough wire on it where I can move anywhere in my little workshop that I want to. One thing that I did want to test out here, just for grins, and I'm going to turn on the. I did want to. Let me bring it back over here and get it all plugged up again. I want to see how I want to check the OSD on the setup of the OSD, so we can see what and I've got it fixed so that you guys will be able to see what the output of the drone is, and I was curious to see that myself. So let me plug it all up here again. And plug this back into the USB port, and plug a battery in it so I get a video transmitter and get my radio on. Well, it's transmitting something, that's for sure. Something is transmitting because my little receiver has gone crazy, but I don't know what, I have no idea what channel it's on. So let me go over here and let it do a channel search and see what channel I'm on. Okay, I do have something coming through, and I got a lens cap on it. So let's see if we got a camera. Yes, we do. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do right now, guys, is I'm going to try to go over to oh, okay, I see what's going on here. All right. I'm looking at the OSD setup, I'm going to want to have basically let's see, battery voltage. So we'll put that down here. I didn't see it. I don't see it show. There it is. Okay. Battery voltage saved. So what I want to do is put the lens cap back on so they don't see the picture. So I just see my OSD display. And I'm going to show you hang on. Oh, I see. I'm really screwing you up here. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have any. All I had was the VTX sound on that last thing. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't scare all of you away. I can fix that. Let me go here, and I have to add to this scene. I have to add my microphone. So let's see where that is. Audio input, add existing, okay. Now you guys should be able to hear me while this nonsense is going on. I'm sorry about that. I didn't have a microphone. I've never, that was a new scene I just created in OBS, and I didn't have any sound going into it, but now it shows me that I do. And it actually is picking up the audio from the VTX. How crazy is that? All right, so let's see why, for some reason, I don't have, because I never saved my auxiliary 6. Let me save that. Now I should get an RSSI number. because I am getting RSSI on aux 6, RSSI on aux 6. I saved it. I'm still not seeing it there. My modes are still working. Horizon Air. Okay, armed and disarmed. And I am getting an RSSI signal. And I did say that it was on aux 6. Maybe I have to disconnect and reboot the quad. Let's try that. Let me get rid of this and reboot the quad
Telemetry lost.
and see.
Telemetry recovered.
Yeah, there you go. Now I got RSSI down there at the bottom. It says 87, 84. You can see that it is working. So I do have the RSSI. I also will have smart audio here, so I can go into my menu. I can go down to features. I can say VTX, and I'm doing all this with stick movements. And it shows me I'm on Fat Shark, band Fat Shark, but I want to be on, I always fly on channel 3. So I'm going to change this to Fat Shark 3. Okay, and the power is 25. So I'm going to say back. I have to set it. Set it yes. Now it just changed channels on me, so I need to go into my receiver here and pick Fat Shark 3, and that's where I am now. And that's the channel, so I don't ever have to fish for channels, but that shows you how smart audio works. And I can say set and go back and go back and save and reboot. So that's so what you're seeing there is exactly what I'll be seeing in the on-screen display of the quad. If I take the lens cap off, of course that'll all be on top of the picture. And there I am, sitting at the computer, as seen by the Tyro 16 camera. So it is, for all intents and purposes, guys, except for a few little final assembly things, it's done. It's built. It all works. Everything works. The radio is set up. The on-screen display is set up. The modes all work. All I need to do is, I think I'm going to lower that flight controller down a 1/16 of an inch, and that ought to fix the receiver room problem. If it doesn't, I'll have to remove that connector from the receiver, from the receiver, and it's done. So smart audio is working all right. That's correct, Vidar. Thank you. I'm sorry about the noise from the VTX. If any of you guys understand OBS, you know what it is to set up a scene. And when you set up a scene, you have to add all the assets to the scene. What video capture things, what image capture things, what sound sources. And I had just thrown together this FPV capture to pick up the I basically have the AV out of my ground station going into an old capture thing that I had that I got for capturing VHS tapes from a composite video and turning them into a digital signal that goes out a USB port, and it works great when I plug when I just plug the AV out of my ground station into that, and then plug the USB into the computer, and then it shows up as a capture device when I go into OBS, and it actually works, and it's what let me actually broadcast in a live stream my live flying around of whoop inside my house. And you know, I could actually create a scene in OBS that allowed everybody on the live stream to watch the actual feed from the quad as I was flying around in the house, which I thought was pretty cool, and I haven't seen anybody else do that before. So it also, in cases like this, lets me show you the actual live video feed out of the quad while I'm working on it. So for what it's worth, guys, I think I'm going to call it with that. I appreciate all of you coming in here and hanging out with me so long, and I hope that I didn't look too stupid with some of the stuff I did, and we did manage to figure it out. One of the problems when you get older, even with glasses, your eyes just aren't as good as they used to be. And I mean, I'm okay. I can see pretty well, but not as sharp as I could when I was in my 30s. And when you're working on these tiny little things, it does cause a little strain sometimes. And sometimes, you know, you wish you had a little better lighting, but we got it done. So that's the Tyro89. And now that I've got everything working, and it looks like I'm actually going to be able to have a flyable quad, I'm back to being somewhat impressed. I don't like the plug-in motors. I mean, that to me is a negative. I don't like the fact that it comes with no instructions whatsoever. That to me is unforgivable when you sell somebody a kit with as many variables as this thing has and no clue as to how it's supposed to go together. That means that somebody with no experience, which is the person that's most likely to buy one of these things. I know that my first quad that I actually built and soldered on was the Tyro99, and there was some instructions with it, and there was a ton of build videos on YouTube about it, and I managed to breeze through it without too much trouble. But because of the small size of this thing, and for somebody who's never or is not used to building things like this, it's going to be a hard time. So if nothing else, I really hope that stumbling through it like we did here today might be helpful. Now, what I'm going to do again, once I fly it and get a little flight footage from it, I'm going to take this video and throw it in an editor and try to cut it all down to 20 minutes or so, however short I can make it, to just go over the main points of what we did and cut out all the thinking time and the tedious type work time, and maybe create a video, help the next guy who wants to build one of these things. So heard that. That's why you have I have one of those lighted magnifying glasses, but it's not bright enough. I have a really cheap chintzy one. I need to get one of those big ass fluorescent ring lit magnifying glasses on a big arm that I can pull in. But so that's it, guys. Thanks for coming. I think I'll play myself out here with a little music. Just caught it right in. There we go. Okay, and take the rest of the day off, guys. Have a great evening. I might see you over at Oz by Drone tonight. I don't know if after all this work here, I feel like getting involved flying live on his stream, but I may do that. So we'll see what happens. And, if I don't see you before, catch you Sunday night here at the FPV workshop. And this Sunday night we got Rick Halber. We're going to get him going with his Tinyhawk, setting up the radio and all that stuff. And may even have a chance to talk more about. I should have this thing finished by then, hopefully test flew it, and we'll talk about that too. So I will see you guys Sunday night. And right now I'm just going to turn it like I always do back over to my good buddy Spank, the monkey, and he can say goodbye to all of you. Take care. Say goodbye, Spank. Come on, Spank. There you go.